Where is it? What's that? I wondered aloud, trying to make sense of everything happening around me. As I grappled with my confusion, my husband began to face demotion at work due to a series of escalating mistakes. His lack of a strong work ethic made the demotion less shocking to him, but I noticed he was also starting to forget things with increasing frequency. Concerned, we decided it was time to visit the hospital to ensure everything was all right. I suspected it might be depression, but the doctor's words left me reeling. My husband had early onset Alzheimer's, a form of dementia. I had heard stories of younger people receiving such diagnoses, but it felt surreal to hear it about my own husband. My name is Sarah, and it has been 5 years since that day. Now I'm 49, and my husband is 53. We never had children, so I continued working after my parents passed away years ago. My husband's parents, however, are still alive, living in a quiet countryside town not too far away. They are kind and caring people, and when my husband was first diagnosed, they even suggested he move in with them. They urged me to consider divorce, believing it might be for the best. But my husband has always detested the idea of living in the countryside, and he adamantly refused to go back. I was also hesitant to rush into divorce simply because he was ill. After nearly 19 years of marriage, sharing both joyful and challenging moments, it didn't feel right to abandon him now that he needed support. Despite his fading memory, he could still manage a relatively normal life. The medication he was taking seemed to slow the disease's progression. It was a mixed bag. There were moments when he could still recognize me and perform basic tasks, yet other times he would remain unresponsive when I spoke to him. On good days, he acted like everything was fine, making it hard to believe anything was wrong. Yet when I pressed him about certain topics, he would often say he didn't know or didn't remember. His mistakes at work became more frequent, and I witnessed him become frustrated to the point of tears when faced with simple paperwork. One day, he told me, "I think I should quit my job. Will you support me if I do?" Seeing his anxiety, I couldn't bring myself to say no. He ended up resigning, and since then, he rarely leaves the house, spending most of his time at home. While he isn't causing any major issues, just occasionally leaving things out or making a mess in the kitchen, I considered it manageable. I discussed the possibility of hiring someone to help care for him while I worked, but the doctor assured me that my husband still had enough awareness to recognize danger. He suggested we revisit that option as the disease progressed. For now, he advised me to remind my husband to lock the door and not venture outside alone. Despite my worries about his well-being, my husband insisted he could manage on his own. Sometimes, he would even snap at me when I pushed him too hard. "Shut up, I'm sick. Stop confusing me," he would shout, overwhelmed and frustrated. 5 years before my husband's diagnosis, when I was 39, I began to let things slide. I had just been promoted to section manager at work, which came with a nice salary increase. When he lost his job, we didn't face immediate financial struggles. We had some savings to fall back on, so there was no need to panic. Thankfully, our savings remained untouched. I was grateful for my decision to keep working through it all. All I wished for was a semblance of normalcy in our lives. However, something strange has been happening lately that has been troubling me. Items I cherished, like my brand name bags, shoes, and recently purchased clothes, have been disappearing. These were expensive pieces that I had saved up for, little treats to myself. I searched high and low, convinced I must have misplaced them, but they remained missing. When I asked my husband about it, he simply shrugged and said, "I don't know. Do you remember taking them anywhere?" I responded that I didn't, and that was the end of the conversation. He repeated that he didn't know, over and over again. This left me wondering if his illness had progressed to the point where he couldn't even recall taking things out of the house. Every time I came home from work and asked how his day had been, he would often respond, "I can't remember." The doctor had warned me that the progression of Alzheimer's could vary greatly, but lately I couldn't shake the feeling that my husband's condition was deteriorating more quickly than expected. If that were true, I became increasingly worried about leaving him alone while I worked. What if he started wandering off? I knew I wouldn't be able to handle it all by myself. In my anxiety over his condition, I secretly installed surveillance cameras around the house. My biggest fear was that he might start wandering outside or bothering others. If that happened, I needed to be able to intervene immediately. A week later, after my husband went to bed, I sat down nervously to review the footage. What I saw on the screen was far beyond anything I could have imagined. My heart dropped as I watched my husband bring another woman into our home. After 5 years of marriage, I hadn't had a genuine conversation with him in ages. He always responded with vague answers to my questions. But in the footage, he was chatting easily with this woman, acting as if nothing was wrong at all. It was hard to believe this was the same man diagnosed with dementia. What shocked me even more was when I recognized who she was. It was the doctor who had diagnosed my husband with Alzheimer's, the same doctor from the hospital where his company sent him for checkups. Was this some sort of cruel joke? Were my husband and the doctor in on this together? Or worse, was the entire diagnosis a lie? As I listened to their conversation, my husband's voice rang clear on the video. "Are you sure she hasn't found out yet?" he asked. "Not at all," the doctor replied. "Dementia is such a convenient disease. I don't have to work, and whenever something comes up, I can just say I don't remember." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The man I had devoted myself to, who I had worked so hard to support, was using his illness as an excuse for an easier life while I bore the entire burden. "You're terrible," the doctor teased. "You make your wife work while you relax at home and sneak me in here. It was your idea when I said I wanted to quit working." My husband laughed. "You said it would be perfect, and it was. I didn't think it would work out this well." The woman crossed her legs and laughed smugly along with him. "She's making all this money now, got promoted, earning more than I do, probably looking down on me. But thanks to her, we get to enjoy this time together." My husband chuckled. "Well, she's basically my ATM now, so she better keep working hard." He called me that. As if that wasn't enough, the woman asked, "Didn't you call her your housekeeper the other day?" "Yeah, housekeeper and ATM," he replied with a laugh. I felt frozen, staring at the screen as my mind struggled to process what I was witnessing. The words from the video echoed relentlessly in my mind, and then my husband said something that cut even deeper. "Oh, by the way, don't take too much stuff out of the house." My wife started to notice things missing. The woman shrugged and replied, "Why don't you just say you forgot where you put them? Blame the disease." He laughed again. "Yeah, no other illness is as convenient as this." In that moment, everything came crashing down. For 5 years, I had stood by his side, pouring my energy into taking care of the house and supporting him without hesitation. Now it all felt like a cruel joke. I had been living in darkness, completely unaware of the deceit that surrounded me. My body felt drained, and I didn't know how to react. For some reason, laughter erupted from me. Perhaps I had finally snapped, or maybe I was so overwhelmed by anger, sadness, frustration, and despair that laughter was all I could manage. But the nightmare was far from over. Later, when I checked our bank account, horror washed over me. The balance was zero. Every dollar I had saved since our marriage was gone. My husband had drained it all. In that instant, it felt as if my entire world had collapsed, as if everything I had worked for had been rendered meaningless. The next morning, as dawn's first light broke, my husband woke up completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "Where's breakfast?" he asked casually. I wanted to scream, to grab him and demand answers, but I held back. He still had no idea I knew everything. The urge to confront him right then and there was overwhelming, but I managed to resist. "What are you planning to do today?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He looked at me, confused. "Why are you asking me that?" "I'm just curious," I replied, barely holding back my anger. "What do you do at home all day?" "Well, I'd love to work like you do," he said with a forced smile. "But I'm sick, so I just try to stay out of trouble." How could he lie so easily? I could barely look at him. I thought about filing for divorce, using his infidelity as grounds for alimony. After everything I had learned, I had every reason to leave him. But when I reflected on the past 5 years and all I had sacrificed, rage consumed me. I broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the sheer unfairness of it all. People who commit such cruel acts often try to laugh it off or offer weak excuses, but nothing could justify what he had done. A few days passed as I tried to figure out my next move. Just seeing his face made me feel sick to my stomach, yet I remained patient, biding my time. I kept the cameras rolling and my husband continued to act as if nothing had changed. He still welcomed the doctor into our home while I was away. One day, I casually asked, "Hey, did anyone come by today? I thought I smelled someone else in the house." Someone might have dropped by," he replied, scratching his head. "Maybe it was a salesman, but I don't remember." I could hardly contain my disgust but forced myself to smile. So how are you feeling? You seem to be doing better lately. Are you responding well to the treatment? I don't think so. If anything, I feel like my memory is getting worse, he said, sounding almost convincing. The doctor said once you have the disease, you can slow it down, but you can't cure it. That's right, I said, playing along. That doctor, she was quite beautiful, wasn't she? Was she? I can't even remember her face, he replied, feigning innocence. I was astounded by how long he could keep up this charade. I could no longer sit idly by. Without telling my husband, I took the recorded footage and went to visit my in-laws. They had always been kind and considerate to me, but they were still his parents, and a part of me feared they would side with him no matter what. I worried they might say my husband cheated because I wasn't good enough or blame me for not understanding why he didn't want to work. Still, I had no one else to turn to. If they sided with him, I thought I would simply accept it, file for divorce, and move on. Mr. and Mrs. Jason, I began when I arrived. I'm sorry to bother you like this, but I need to talk to you about something important. My mother-in-law looked concerned. You look so worn out. What happened? She invited me in and offered to make me something hot to eat. Her kindness nearly brought me to tears. I was terrified of their reaction, but I had nothing to worry about. After I showed them the video of my husband and the female doctor, my in-laws immediately sank to their knees, tears streaming down their faces. My foolish son, I'm so sorry, Sarah, my father-in-law said, his voice trembling. We had no idea, my mother-in-law added, holding my hands tightly. Please forgive us. Instead of blaming me, they cried with me, and in that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. I felt an enormous weight lift off my shoulders as the tension that had built up inside me for so long finally began to ease. Even though I was still furious with my husband, knowing I had someone on my side meant everything to me. Amidst this dark time, there was one unexpected bright spot. I received a promotion at work, offered the position of department head. It felt like a glimmer of hope, a reminder that all my hard work hadn't gone unnoticed and that there was still a place for me where I could thrive. Hey, Sarah, are you listening to me? My husband's voice jolted me back to reality. What? Oh, sorry, I was just spacing out, I replied, pretending to be distracted. You're acting weird, he said, narrowing his eyes. His comment sparked an idea. I smiled inwardly and responded, well, maybe I'm losing it too. Dementia's no joke, right? His eyes widened, and I could tell I had his attention. From that day forward, I began subtly mimicking the things he had said about his illness, the very things he used to deceive me. I started dropping small hints of forgetfulness, feigning confusion. What was I doing earlier? I would ask. I've been making mistakes at work, and I can't even remember how to use the washing machine. As time passed, my husband became increasingly unsettled. I could see the fear creeping in, worried that I might actually be losing my memory just as he had pretended to. Then one day, I came home to find that he was gone, leaving behind a note and the divorce papers already filled out. I don't want to cause you any more trouble, so I've decided to divorce you. Please don't look for me, Ethan. I wasn't surprised. I knew exactly why he had run away. He thought I had dementia and didn't want to be stuck taking care of me. Of course, I knew where he had gone. He had rented an apartment to continue his relationship with the female doctor. The hidden camera footage revealed everything, including the moment I heard him laugh while telling the doctor, I've moved my savings so I don't have to worry about money for a while. He had no idea what was coming. I wasted no time filing the divorce papers and sending him a bill for alimony and property division addressed to his new apartment. I also sent a copy to the doctor's house by certified mail. As it turned out, the doctor was married and lived in the suburbs with her family, and her husband deserved to know what was happening. So I sent him a copy of the video as well. It didn't take long for my husband to call me in a panic. What the hell is this? Alimony? I replied calmly. You're going to pay alimony for cheating on me. Are you serious? He stammered. And you sent it to the doctor too. Of course, her husband deserves to know about it. Don't you think? I'm sure they're dealing with that mess right now. Along with the legal documents, I sent my husband a copy of the hidden camera footage. He was speechless when he realized how much I knew. How did you figure it all out? He muttered, his voice tinged with disbelief. I was surprised too, I said with a smirk. Can't believe you fell for my act, huh? You tricked me, he shouted, but it was no use. He had no ground to stand on. Trick you, I replied, raising an eyebrow. After everything you've done, do you think you have any right to be angry? After pretending to have dementia for 5 years, living off my income, and bringing another woman into our home? His bravado faded quickly, and he mumbled something, his words slurring as if he didn't know what to say. But about the division of property, he stammered. I don't have anything left, he said, his voice trembling. I smiled coldly. We still have your savings, don't we? He paused, and his expression fell. I've already spent it all, he admitted, the defeat evident in his voice. Even after everything that had happened, he was still trying to wriggle out of responsibility. But this time, there was no escape. I had everything I needed: video evidence, documents, and the truth. You don't seem to realize, I said, my voice steady. I planted cameras in the house. I heard every word you said to the doctor. I have all the footage. It's over. I have solid proof. I looked him in the eye, firm in my resolve. And your parents know everything. He erupted, fury igniting in him. How dare you tell them about this? He shouted, his anger boiling over. He still didn't grasp that he had no right to yell at me. The irony of it all was almost laughable. Thankfully, he had revealed so much during our conversations that I hadn't needed to hire a private investigator. When I pointed this out, he fell silent, seemingly at a loss for words, and then abruptly hung up the phone. A month later, he called again, confusion evident in his voice. What's going on? What are you talking about? I asked, feigning ignorance. I just went to the apartment, and they said it's already been canceled. I almost laughed. What apartment? Our apartment, he snapped, incredulous. The absurdity of his question was astounding. He was the one who left the divorce papers behind after all. Did he really think he could just waltz back into my life? I canceled the lease right after you left, I told him, relishing his frustration. His anger flared again. What do you mean you canceled the lease without telling me? Since you're unemployed, you couldn't be the tenant anymore. Once you quit your job, I had the lease transferred into my name. The decision to end the lease was mine and mine alone. I bought a condo. I live there now, I added, feeling a sense of finality. You bought it? He asked, disbelief coloring his tone. With the alimony I got from you and your lover plus the savings I took back, I replied. It's a small place, but it's mine. It's my castle, really. Well, I'm coming over then, he declared, as if that were the most natural thing in the world. Don't you have a girlfriend to go to? I asked, already knowing the answer. I broke up with her, he muttered. Her husband found out she was cheating and divorced her. She's a mess, lost her reputation at the hospital, got sued for a diagnostic error, and now she's in debt. Both her ex-husband and I are suing her for alimony. Oh, really? I replied, barely hiding my sarcasm. So I've decided I'll start over with you, he said, as if that would fix everything. The alimony should be canceled now, right? We can get that money back. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Did he really think I would take him back after everything? I felt like laughing, but instead, I spoke calmly. You're out of your mind. Why should I pay anything? We're divorced and I never want to see your face again. There's no chance in hell I'm getting back together with you. With that, I hung up the phone and immediately blocked his number. I was done. Apparently, after our call, my ex-husband went to visit his parents, probably thinking they would take him in. What he didn't know was that they had sold their house and moved into a senior apartment. They told me he was shocked to see the for sale sign in front of the house. When he contacted them, they refused to help. We had a lawyer working on collecting the remaining money from the division of property and alimony, so there wouldn't be much left in his pocket anyway. He had lost his job, couldn't pay the rent on his apartment, and was eventually evicted. With nowhere else to turn, he must have gone to his parents, only to find they had anticipated this and moved out to avoid him coming back. They later told me, if we had stayed, he might have tried to move back in. We couldn't let that happen, Sarah. We didn't want you to suffer because of him. From what I've heard, he's now working as a laborer at a factory, but his laziness hasn't changed. He's constantly getting yelled at by younger employees, and they've even resorted to physically confronting him. Despite his dire situation, he continues to reach out to his parents for help, but they brush him off every time. Several months have passed since the divorce, and I'm still in touch with my former in-laws. They've become like real parents to me, always concerned about my well-being. I plan to stay close to them and take care of them if they ever need me. As for me, I've been promoted to department manager, and my salary has increased. Life is peaceful now, and I'm fully enjoying my time alone.